Outside the Box Reviews, we are taking a look at a cheap Chinese knockoff. Today we are looking at the Bootleg Bandai Tamashii Nations S.H.Figuarts Super Saiyan 3 Goku figure. And me even having this figure was the result of looking for Figuarts figures on eBay, seeing this one, knowing there was about a 98% chance it was a bootleg, but I kind of wanted to see just in case. The seller definitely lied on eBay, so I know I could probably send this back or dispute it if I really want to. They showed official packaging from Comic-Con and they showed the official figure instead of what amounts to a very, very poor reproduction of it. So there's no reason to take this review too seriously, so let's jump right in. Goku comes with a knockoff Tamashii stand, and this, like everything else here, just feels cheap. The plastic quality feels definitely a lot weaker. The arm piece itself is full of bubbles, but the clamp itself is actually pretty tight when you get the clamp pieces on there. So it actually isn't horrible. It definitely does its job once you tighten up the screws in here, but it definitely feels a lot more fragile than the standard one. Goku also comes with these effect pieces to add to your stand to make it look like an aura of Super Saiyan power. Now these are supposed to be, you know, bright yellow and with a little bit of frosting effect pieces. You can see they're very dull. They actually look like they were clear plastic that yellowed and they painted the edges. So definitely messing up the effect. There's also a lot of very sloppy paint on them. You get a clip that will actually go onto the figure stand itself, and then we build all of these effect pieces off of it. And that's about the best I can get this thing to go together. It's definitely not built particularly well and has a very hard time attaching to the stand. We start off with that little clip that goes onto the stand post. One of the beams comes and attaches to that, and all the other arcs of power kind of connect onto that and build off of it. But the joints on here don't fit properly, and it really just does not go together the way it's supposed to. I'm sure it's just because it's a crappy mold of it, or maybe I'm just dumb and can't figure it out. But definitely does not work the way it's intended to. Of course, you would put your Goku in the middle of this, but I don't think that's happening anytime soon. Goku does come with a variety of hands. We got 2 fists, 2 kind of grabbing hands, 2 open blasting hands, and 1 instant transmission hand. The detailing on these actually isn't too shabby. The fingernails are sculpted in there. The paint isn't bad. There is a little tanner than I kind of would have preferred, but there actually is decent detail on these. Goku also comes with 2 different heads. Both have a large amount of the front of his hair connected to him. No bangs to remove here. I don't know if it was like that on the Comic-Con version. This head actually isn't bad. The paint job on it is actually pretty solid. The hair, and I'll have this same comment with the rest of the figure, I actually do like the shading they did on it. He's once again a little tanner than I would like, but not badly done. This second head where he's looking off to the side with his teeth bared, I know he has no eyebrows. It's part of the Super Saiyan 3 transformation, but he has some serious Cro-Magnon looking stuff going on here. So this one a little less appealing to me. And when I do reconnect these heads to the body, you'll notice they're a very different paint shade than the skin, especially around his neck. Goku also comes with a halo, which is cool because he did have that at this stage in the game, in the show. And once again, it's that crappy, very dirty looking plastic instead of a nice yellow. There's a very small hole here in Goku's hair, and the halo can be pegged into that, and we get the vague illusion that Goku is returning from the afterlife. For the sculpt and paint on the rest of the figure, well, the sculpt is actually good. I'm pretty sure they took the exact same molds they used for the original version of this figure. Somebody probably stole it over there in China and reproduced the figure pretty faithfully to the San Diego Comic-Con exclusive sculpt. The paint is atrocious on 90% of this figure. I already mentioned the face totally does not match the neck, and that totally doesn't match his collarbone here. The section here at the top of the shirt, very upper section there, that is actually supposed to be his chest, not part of the shirt, so that is actually painted incorrectly. The very bright baby blue of the shirt, I think might actually be accurate, but I think it looks really dumb. It's a bad choice of color, as well as the dull orange for the rest of his costume. There's a lot of paint slop here. You can see the bleeding over of the blue. The skin's very tan in most places, and actually in the elbows and things and the joints, it's much paler, probably the color of the plastic used. Speaking of color of plastic used, if you look at his belt here, it actually was molded in the same color as the rest of his costume, and very poorly painted a purplish along with his wristbands here. The lower torso here, I've actually flipped mine around, but it does come backwards with the ass end facing towards you, which seems appropriate for this figure. The sculpting on the pants is what you'd expect, same with the boots, but the plastic here you can feel is not the same quality as the other figures in the line. Once again, wouldn't expect it. It is a bootleg, but it almost has this chalk stocky and very cheap feel to it that is definitely not like the other Figuarts figures. The one place I will give this figure compliments in terms of this knockoff is the hair. I think the hair is really well done. It's a nice yellow. They put some orange highlights in it to give it this really cool shading effect. And I overall actually really like the hair here. So if I'm going to give this figure any compliment, it's that. For articulation, this thing's a wobbly mess. But he does have the same articulation you'd expect with the figure. He has articulated back section of his hair here. It's on a ball joint, so you can actually rotate it and move it up and down a little bit. I think that's kind of cool. The head is on a very similar to the standard Figuarts joint, but it's built a little differently and doesn't quite offer you the same range of motion. Of course, you're never going to look up with this hair here, but you can look down. The weight of the hair actually isn't a huge problem, which really surprised me. Of course, you can look side to side and tilt the head. He also has that joint at the base of the neck, a little ball joint there. There's dual ball joints at the shoulder, so you can move them all different directions, but it's pretty loose and the arm does tend to fall. There's also articulation here at the upper part of the sleeve, and as you can see, these also fall off very easily. It's swivel at the upper arm. We have a single joint at the elbow that could also rotate a little bit. Swivel and hinge at the wrist. Same kind of joint we have in the standard release, but this feels a little weaker, a little tinier. It's the standard ball joints at the waist where you can actually pop him apart, but he comes apart very easily. But you can kind of separate the halves and get better articulation out of that ball joint there and move them around. The legs also very, very loose. Hard to stand this guy on his own. But they will move forward and back, out to the side. They do have that drop down joint, and you can swivel, which is also extremely loose. He has a double joint at the knee. He has a slight rotation here at the top of the boot. We have a ball joint at the ankle and toe articulation. Just to compare him side by side, here he is next to the real Vegito, using most of this same body, a lot of the same parts, especially the upper lower torso and the upper legs. And definitely a quality difference here. You can see just in the shine on Goku here that it's definitely a cheaper made piece. And the quality is readily apparent in the difference here. So it's not even a real point to go ahead and recommend or not recommend this figure. It's a cheap bootleg, so there's no way I could recommend buying him. However, this Goku does go for some serious money because it was a Comic-Con exclusive and pretty damn limited. So for a lot of fans, this may be the only reasonable way to ever have this figure. I don't think that really doesn't justify getting a bootleg of it. But as I said, I picked this up just on the slight hope that it might be real, and it was apparent from the moment I opened the box that it was not. What I have here on the left is proof that these bootlegs may not be the worst thing if you have a little bit of artistic skill. Not saying that I do, but I attempt to. Before I did toy reviews, I did custom figures, and while none of them were great, I put a lot of work into them and logged a lot of hours doing it. So when I picked up the Super Saiyan 3 Goku, I also had picked up a standard Goku. Not realizing they were from the same seller, not realizing they were both coming from China, I thought the standard Goku, being a more recent release, might actually be a legitimate piece. He turned out to also be a bootleg and suffered almost all the exact same problems that the Super Saiyan 3 Goku does, except for the fact that his flesh tone was actually a lot better. But I have repainted him as Super Saiyan God Goku from Battle of the Gods. I used super glue to tighten up his joints, which I still need to do a tutorial video on, and I think I salvaged what was a pretty crappy figure. I am going to do the same for the Super Saiyan 3 Goku, and I'll post on Instagram and Facebook how that turns out. So if you're interested, or if you want to see any other crap that I post, please follow along there. And until next time, this has been our Outside the Box reviews, hopefully buying less bootlegs from China in the future.